Welcome back to Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. I'm personal financial planner, columnist, and financial therapist Rick Kahler. Research tells us that 90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally, not logically. For nearly 4 decades, I've been helping people make better money decisions. So what makes my financial worldview different from most financial experts? I blend the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Good money decisions are not just about the money. So let's get started with today's episode. Well, welcome back to another edition. And I have Joetta Johnson with us again this week. And last week we left off talking about underearning and the particular program that Joetta has designed to address this, and a little bit of her story of how she was an underearner, and by applying now what she's teaching, helped to address the issues within that would lead to someone being an underearner. Mm-hmm. And I suspect, Joetta, that being an underearner isn't solved just as easily as raising your fee.
I wish it was that easy.
It may not be about the money.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
So I'm just really curious about this, your personal history and how you have grown to be doing the work that you're doing. I mean, you're a poster child for what you're doing. I don't hear you telling people to do anything that you haven't done yourself. Mm-hmm. And so speak a little bit to your work with underearnings and your underearning program.
Yeah, so I created this program called Earning Power because in my own journey, in my own desire to expand my income without having to do things that, let's say, we're very much like a push, right? Like there's a lot in the culture, work hard, have a lot of drive, ambition. But because I had the blessing of having some health challenges, it wasn't a way that I was able to go in order to increase my income. So I began to understand for myself and for my clients that I was working with, that there's so much more potential to earn without feeling like you have to work a lot harder. And that's what I wanted to learn about. How do you do this without working harder? And so in my own experience, I began to collect all of these processes and tools and approaches and understanding the underearning patternings, the relationship to time, the relationship to authority figures, the relationship to value in the world and confidence. So I began to kind of take these components, understand them and apply them in my own life. And then my income began to increase as well as my clients when I apply these principles. So I began to develop a program that had, using all of these tools and techniques that I learned about and refined and blended it, with hypnosis. Because as you're saying, it's not just a matter of, well, I'm just going to raise my rates. Right? Because a person can raise their rates, but if they have any type of under-earning patterns or even fear of success, they will spend all the money. So I also noticed that, right? And working with people, we can increase the earnings, but if you spend it all, it really is no net difference. I mean, maybe you have a better lifestyle, right? But if you're still at net zero, because you increased your income, but you also increased your spending, then it's really not actually earning power, because part of earning power is also being able to, I say, accumulate money in your checking account, accumulate money in your savings account, accumulate money in your investments. And it's the ability, the capacity to hold more and more money. And so earning power a lot is it's this ability to increase one's value and income in the world and contribute to the world in exchange for that income, and then being able to hold the money without, siphoning it off. It's like the lottery winners, that win the lottery and then it's just gone.
Yeah, you and I have seen that so much. In fact, you're triggering a memory with one of my jogging partners of, oh man, 30 years ago or so, and where I'm talking about money and earning and spending, and he says, "Rick, sounds like you got a great offense. You can earn money, but your defense is really bad." So that is so true. So what are the relationships of time, authority figures, and your value in the world? How does all that come together, and how does that impact your ability to hold or be emotionally or spiritually comfortable with accumulating? Because for some folks, that there would be a spiritual disconnect in accumulating. That would be considered selfish or
That's right. That's a whole belief system right there.
yes, yeah. Hmm.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, that's the relationship to authority figures, right? Authority figures can be parents, authority figures can be the government, authority figures can be religious leaders. And it is this relationship with authority figures that has imprinted our subconscious mind, especially when we're very small children and we're kind of soaking up the messages from these authority figures. And sometimes in the relationship with those authority figures, like a big part of mine was the rebellion against authority figures. So if my parents were like, sorry, we can't afford that, or, you know, this is all we're able to provide you with, and I'm like, no. Wait a minute, is that true? And so I began to rebel against that when I grew up and was making my own money, which was part of my overspending problem, is that I was rebelling against that limitation that I received from authority figures, right? And so this relationship to authority figures, we get imprinted by their messages when we're very young and through the course of our life. And then we're playing out dynamics in our psychology with money. Like if our parents might say, like, eat all the food on your plate because children are starving out there, and you begin to get the message like, oh my God, like I can't have more than others,
Okay.
right? And that comes from an authority figure. Like I can't have more than others. And so if I start to have more than others around me, then I need to get rid of it. Right. So that's a subconscious program that gets kind of embedded inside of our psyche. And then we're just playing that out unknowingly. I've worked with clients where the messages were so strong in this way that they would give away all of their time and not earn any money for themselves because they were donating all their time to these nonprofit organizations because these messages were so strong in their psyche. Hence the
Yeah.
relationship with time, right? When our time is allocated and we only have so much time in this life, and we don't even know how much time that is. And when we're, just kind of not intentional about that time and not really understanding like it is the thing that we have to leverage for our contribution in this world and impact and also to generate resources, money.
Mhm.
So that relationship to time is a really, really big one when it comes to under earning. I think it might even be like on the Under Earners Anonymous, maybe like the first one. If you know you have an under earning problem, if you have a problem with time. And a lot of people will walk around with the belief there's not enough time, right? You hear this all the time. There's not enough time. There's not enough time. I don't have enough time. And I'm running out of time. Like these kind of messages is a
Mhm.
form of scarcity, right? Because if you have a lot of money and you have no time, you actually do not have wealth. That you can't because you're running around like crazy and you might have a lot of money, but I have, certain clients I work on this with that generate a lot of money, but they don't have any time.
Mhm.
And so, I believe that wealth is an abundance of both. And
Mhm.
it's not an easy mix to get right.
Right.
It takes some work. It's taken me work to, I'm very diligent about my time now. I'm very, very discerning. I'm very intentional and I'm very clear about what I'm willing to spend my time on and what I'm not willing to spend my time on. And I'm very clear about how much of that time is for business development, how much of it is for my work with clients, how much of it is for fun, how much of it is for adventure, for relationships. And so, I create these time maps similar to a budget with money. And you have a time map, like a map of intention for money and a map of intention for time. And I work with clients like, okay, what's the intention? And I've done this several times in my career where I'll map out my schedule and it's like, this is exactly what I want my schedule to look like. And so my schedule looks like that for the most part. In the beginning, I didn't know how it was going to happen because I only wanted to work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. But I created that after mapping out the vision of the time and what I wanted it to look like. And then eventually it just came into existence. Now, part of that was my intention, right? I'm going to
Right.
work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and pretty much have 4-day weekends as much as I possibly can.
I have never heard time equated to a budget, and it makes a lot of sense, a time budget.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
Definitely.
a fascinating concept.
Mm.
Um, in looking at the interrelationship between I budget my money, I budget my time, or I schedule my money, I schedule my time.
Yes.
I'm curious how your value in the world plays into that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So value in the world, we also get a lot of messages about our self-worth. So I kind of look at, self-worth and net worth. And it is an interesting correlation. Like as a person increases their self-worth, what I notice is that their net worth increases because
Mm,
they're more willing to provide their future self with the gift of abundance. And this is a lot of what I learned around my overspending is that my future self was eventually going to experience the impact of the debt, the impact of not having as much in retirement. The future self is eventually going to experience that. But when you don't value yourself, this impact is going to be very substantial when you get to it. When you get 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, and you look back. I just wrote a whole newsletter on are you going to choose the pain of discipline or the pain of regret? I chose the pain of regret a lot in my younger years because I didn't have a relationship with my future self. And I learned this a lot from savers, natural savers. I'm more of a natural spender. I had to train myself to become more of a saver by working with savers. I learned a lot from them. And they're constantly thinking about their future self. They're very, very good about this. But they will, potentially not take care of themselves in the present moment, which I think
right.
they can learn from spenders in this way. So each archetype, spender, saver, they each have their pros and their cons, their gifts and their blessings, and then their shadow side. And so I've kind of worked on both of these sides as spender, saver. What are the pros? What are the cons? We're always somewhere, in between these two archetypes. But I learned about this future self, and I do hypnosis with people about relating to the future self. Like, what is it going to be like? based upon what you're doing currently, what is it going to be like for the future self? And so this is a way of valuing oneself, is valuing our future. And so you have to kind of understand, like, am I valuing my future, or am I neglecting myself? Am I neglecting my future self based upon these current decisions I'm making? And that's just one aspect of value, right? Other aspects of value are how, like, do we feel like we're able to convey our gifts in the world and receive money in exchange? Because some people, it's very difficult to ask what the value of what they're delivering actually is. And
Mm-hmm.
I've worked a lot with people in the tendency, like, oh my God, they don't have as much as me. Like, I better like reduce my rate, or I better reduce my pricing. And these are all forms of not valuing oneself, is like how we earn, how we charge, how we take care of our future self, how we save, how we invest. These are all like where it comes out in the wash, essentially.
That is a lot, Joetta. It's so rich. Um, I'm still sitting with the pain of discipline or the pain of regret.
Mm,
Um, and um, fascinating concept that as our self-worth grows, so will our net worth. Um, I've approached that from a different perspective of in one of the quadrants that money scripts fall into would be uh, money worship, or probably more money status, where my net worth equals my self-worth.
yeah.
More I gain identity or being out of my net worth. Your flip on that, I think, is so feels really right in money work. As I work on myself, I work on the inner conflicts, the stories, the scripts that I've been telling myself. We know that that's going to come out as we grow, as we heal around our money. It's going to come out in um, um, more supportive money behaviors to ourselves. I'll stop overspending. I'll be able to start saving. And so I think that's a fascinating insight
Yeah.
that really rings true. Um, so I'm really curious in weaving all this together, and I especially love the idea of really focusing on the future self. And I'm remembering a reporter that called me and asked me to talk about how working with the future self can impact the present self. And I didn't have much to say. Now I know you need to call Joetta. Tell me how hypnosis uh, works into this.
Yeah. Yeah. Hypnosis is a very powerful tool. When I was working with clients for a long time, um, probably like 17, 18 years, and coming up over and over and over again with these subconscious like patterns. And even though I have a lot of tools and I've had tons of clients that have had lots of breakthroughs, but particular clients, I would notice, like, we're not getting traction here. Like, we keep going back to the same patterns over and over and over again, no matter how much work we've done on it. So, because I've done a lot of self hypnosis, I've always been working on hypnosis on myself and doing like listening to hypnosis like all the time, and having, really profound experiences with it. I began to feel like, it feels like I really need to go in this direction, because I was really determined to find ways to help people unpack like limiting beliefs, right? Limiting beliefs and patterns. Limiting beliefs and patterns all live in the subconscious mind. That's where they were formed. The subconscious mind just carries them out. That's the nature of the subconscious mind. At least part of it is carry out the task. Once it knows what the task is, like beating your
Right.
heart, it just does it. You don't think about it. Driving, once you learn how to do it, it is all the subconscious mind. They say that
Hmm.
90% of our actions through a day and our decisions are coming from the subconscious mind. So if that is not changed, we see the results in our life and we're like, I don't like these results. You can look to the subconscious mind. It is
Hmm.
what's carrying out the orders. So I knew,
Exactly.
like, once you give the subconscious mind a new set of orders, and once it grasps it, really takes it in, it will carry
Hmm.
it out.
Hmm.
The way to get messages into the subconscious mind, it's beyond just intentions and affirmations. It's actually telling the subconscious mind when it is more in an impressionable state, which I call the theta zone. When we're
Okay.
into like theta brain waves, the subconscious mind is receptive to suggestion. And so when we can train it and teach it, like, oh, like I have this particular money pattern of overspending, for example, and we teach it just like someone would teach it to stop smoking because it's not good for you. Oh, I need to not do that anymore because that's bad for us. And once it can grasp that and fully believe it, if it's a new belief, a new pattern, it will take it on and it will happen naturally. And so this is why I started to integrate it and get certified in hypnosis and continue to get all kinds of training around it, is because like once you can train it to do what you want it to do, it will. But it takes a process, because the subconscious mind is designed to go back to homeostasis. Homeostasis is like, I'm comfortable with the way it was. Let's go back there. So like when you
Exactly.
go to like maybe a Tony Robbins workshop and Joe Dispenza, or these like big workshops with big experiences, and they're really incredible and so like amazing, and then you go back home and you're back to the same pattern because
Yes.
it's homeostasis. Subconscious, like, that was great, but we're going back to where it's safe. So until you can give it the proper messaging, which comes through symbols and stories and like visualizations, it won't even grasp it, because it took the messages in at such a young age in such a strong way. It'll just continue to carry them out. And so this has been the progression of my work, because I know, like, that is what really has to shift in order to have a completely different money paradigm.
This is so fascinating to me because two podcasts ago, I did a podcast on memory reconciliation.
Hmm.
And the three parts of that is first getting back into a memory or a felt sense of how this was, how it is in the body to believe this,
Mhm.
and then being presented with something that is different from that. And the third step is, I think, exactly what you described, holding those two, the felt sense of how it feels to believe it or do it this way, and how it feels to believe it or do it another way, and staying with that long enough to begin a reprogramming in the behavior. And I was talking about this in terms of internal family systems, but you've
Mhm.
actually described a lot of that process. I've heard it say that it's somewhat like a hypnotic state or a trance
Mhm.
in doing IFS. IFS folks refer to it as going inside.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just fascinating the parallels of what you're talking about and I can't articulate it as well as you of to your point, if we're not in that state of seeing these two opposites, if I say, and really sitting with it, we snap back to where we were.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think with hypnosis, it's a very effective tool. And in hypnosis, you learn about IFS and these different parts of the selves, and you learn how to work with these different parts of the self that are carrying out certain behaviors because they think they're doing something really amazing for you. And when you get in touch with those parts and tell them basically what you're doing is destructive, and we need to get more in line with this if we
We're
want to
not a
help.
kid anymore. This doesn't work anymore. We're adult.
Exactly, exactly. But it's working with those small child parts of the self that are very strong in our behavior. They will carry out even if we're adults, childlike
Oh,
behaviors.
yeah.
With money especially. But also, I've also learned because some people think of hypnosis like a magic bullet. And it can be with certain behaviors like smoking, for example, that people could do one session of hypnosis and stop smoking. However, money is far more complex than a physical behavior like this. And
Mm-hmm.
so because it's rooted in our sense of safety and security and survival, it's very tied to our parents and our society, and it really has so many, dimensions to it. It takes a process with hypnosis and a self-hypnosis practice. This is where people get the most traction, is when they have a practice that they're doing on their own day after day after day. And then these patterns really do shift. They really can shift in monumental ways. So it's the process of doing these hypnosis kind of sessions along with self-hypnosis to train the mind. This is where we're going over and over and over again. That's how it got programmed in the first place when your parents said, like money doesn't grow on trees over and over and over again. They don't even know they're saying it. They're just saying it over and over and over again.
Joetta, this has been fascinating. Of course, right now I want to go into a whole nother session on self-hypnosis, but we don't have the time. We're just going to have to leave everybody hanging. How can people get in touch with you? What resources do you have?
Yes. So I am on Instagram, Priestess of Finance. I believe it's all one word together. I'm on Facebook, Priestess of Finance. I'm on LinkedIn. My website is priestessoffinance.com. And my email is joetta@priestessoffinance.com. So there are many ways that you can, get in touch and follow us on social media. I'm constantly putting out content on hypnosis and all the topics we talked about today. We're constantly, writing blogs and newsletters on, how to work with all this material we spoke about today.
So if one can remember Priestess of Finance,
That's right.
you can find you.
Yes. Also under my name, Joetta Marie Johnson, you'll find me as well. I'm out there.
Joetta, it has been just fascinating. Every other sentence is like a gem that we could have gone in and probably done hours and hours of discussion on. It has been such a privilege and a pleasure. I am honored that with your intentionality of time, that you decided to allot some to us. And I think my listenership has been super interested in this. Will really land with them in so many of the things that you said. So look up the Priestess of Finance and you'll find her.
Thanks so much, Rick. It's been an honor to be here with you. I really appreciate it.
And thank you, Joetta. Thanks for joining me, Rick Kahler, for another episode of Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. This is where I combine the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Remember, every financial behavior, whether it appears illogical to you or others, makes perfect sense when we understand the underlying beliefs, feelings, and thoughts. Sign up for my weekly blog at financialawakenings.com. I hope you'll join me again for our next episode.